Welcome to another episode of Distory with Kate and Kirk. My name is Kirk from walruscarp.com, and today we are going to head into the Tower of Terror and actually board the ride vehicle, head up, see a hallway, and then go through the Fifth Dimensions hallway and then stop right there. With me to explore the world of the supernatural is Kate, the Disney Cicerone. Kate, yo, what up?
Hey, I'm really excited for this episode because we have way more concepts and storyboards than we usually have. And so this is, if you want to see some things you rarely see from Imagineering to understand the design of this attraction, this episode is for you. And I cannot wait. I usually have about 92 assets and photos and things to show you guys. I have 162 today. It's a lot. So
that's a lot of assets.
Yes, it's going to be a wild ride. And honestly, the corridor and Fifth Dimension are some of my favorite scenes in this attraction. So it'll be really fun. All that being said, let's jump in because we have a lot to cover today. So we're going to start with the load lift area. And this is actually a throwback to the Hollywood Haunted Hotel version. The freefall version of this attraction is the image that I'm showing you with this man who is dragging his little girl into the elevator who looks absolutely terrified, which I think is a great place to start for the Tower of Terror.
That's what it looks like for the first day of school at my household.
Yeah, same over here. I do have some information from the Imagineering Show Info Guide, which is not public, from 1999. Its description of the load area is this. It says, as the guests wait to be taken to their rooms, the lift mechanisms sputter, spark, and whine, instilling very little confidence in the hotel's few remaining elevators. The ever-helpful bellhop offers an unnerving, knowing smile as the service elevators arrive, their doors opening wide like the waiting jaws of a hungry animal. The guests' rooms are ready, and their nightmarish journey into the Twilight Zone begins. So that's what they're going for Imagineering for the vibes here. I think that they accomplished that very well. But Kirk, I actually found a reference to an elevator that we haven't talked about yet from the Twilight Zone. So
is it from the episode Elevators, and More?
Fairly
I don't know how we
there.
missed that one.
This is actually from season 1, episode 34, called The After Hours, where a woman named Marcia White visits a department store to buy a gift and finds herself in a mysterious, unstaffed 9th floor that doesn't officially exist. After strange encounters and growing confusion, she discovers she's actually a mannequin who it's her turn to come to life, essentially, and roam in the outside world for a while. And then she goes back, and then some other mannequin gets the chance to do that, and they just take turns, which is it's an interesting episode. But the elevator is featured heavily in that because the 9th floor doesn't officially exist. So they're going to a floor that doesn't exist, which we're going to go to the 13th floor, which technically shouldn't exist because they didn't build 13th floors because of superstition. So I thought that was an interesting connection.
Fun fact, Kate and I don't actually exist, and we're mannequins. But during Distory, we come alive.
We're like AI enhanced mannequins. I spent most of my life just posing.
We're still in the slop phase. We'll get better, I promise.
The other thing that I have for this load area is the Imagineering storyboards for Tower of Terror. We've been looking at these throughout this entire attraction in all of the episodes, but there's going to be a lot of these today because we're going to move significantly through this story. So this is frame 62, and it's showing essentially the area where you enter the lift. And so the doors are opening and it says service elevator, and it says the ride vehicle is a large service elevator. It has been outfitted to accommodate 19 seated passengers. They are instructed to enter. Once they're seated with their restraints in place, the doors close and they hear the voice of Rod Serling and the familiar Twilight Zone theme. The remainder of the ride is scored appropriately. And then after that, frame 63 is scene 6, ascending to corridor. There's a voiceover that says you are the passengers on a most uncommon elevator about to take the strangest journey of your lives, a journey beyond time, beyond reason, beyond reality. And then it shows the elevator ascending up with an up arrow for frame 64. And frame 65 is the same. We see the bottom of the elevator in that one. And 66 as well as more of the elevator. And then frame 67, the doors ding open and open to the corridor scene, which is where we're going to head next in a minute. But
this feels like animated almost. Like how quickly you're going through the storyboards. Like it's impressive how much they put in each frame.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it really does imitate the ride exactly how it's going to look. But before we get into the corridor scene, which has a lot in it, I do have this really amazing color board for the ride vehicle itself, where you can see the seats and they're labeled with A, B, and C in this particular instance. And that you can see all the variations of green they use in this Kirk. Like there's like all kinds of army green and this kind of like lighter mint green color. And there's even then some almost like a coral color. And of course brown is in there as well. But it's wonderful to see how they created the depth of color in that particular ride vehicle by all of these different blends of paint.
One thing that I think is really cool is the history of the ride vehicles. So this is just like externally when you're looking in, you can kind of see the colors of the patina and all that rust, particularly the patina on the back, which is that green. But as we enter into the ride vehicle, now this is what it currently looks like. And you notice it's not affixed. This is a free moving vehicle, which is so cool that they clamp it on and off. We talked a little bit about the ride system itself in the creation and construction. But the one thing that's unique here is that you notice that everyone has the same exact style of safety restraint.
Yeah.
Safety restraints for this ride system have changed over the years. Everyone is used to this ride system right now, which are seatbelts. But prior to that, like when this actually opened, all the way until I forget the exact specific date when seatbelts were used instead.
2002.
2002.
Mm-hmm.
So if you look right here, you can actually see all of these lap bars. So you would sit on a bench seating that had a communal lap bar. So like imagine being a kiddo and you're next to a rotund man like myself who needs a little bit more space. You're flying up out of that seat because I fly up in the seat now. My bag flies up because that's just how physics and gravity works in the free fall experience. And I loved that. That was such a cool way to experience this because you really did get airborne on it. Now, of course, 2002, we had some safety changes and we no longer are getting the fun lap bars. Although you do notice in this picture that there was the bench lap bar, but there always was, because this was never covered by that lap bar, there always was one seat. That center top row always had a seatbelt. And you may be wondering, how does a seatbelt work?
I know, I was wondering that.
I'm not going to go into a lot of this, but they're basically automotive grade lap belts with a male and a female buckle and a spring-loaded locking ton and ratcheting pawl system with a red release button. So these are dual locking systems because it uses a mechanical and electromechanical. So you're getting the steel pawl, which is the physical, and then the electromechanical sensor circuit, which will confirm that they are locked. It's also, a fail-safe or just a double check from the electronic system is why we have those wonderful yellow straps that you always have to be yanking on. But these are anchored to a load cell and a strain relief bracket, which absorb the dynamic forces of your fall and are rated for over 3,000 pounds, which is many times more than any kind of weight that the drop would ever generate. They do have retractor spools, hence why some people, when they screw it up and it locks on them, they have to let go and you pull it back up. You know that from your car safety system is the exact same. If you stop, it's like stuck and you have to let go of it and then it can release. You can also test this seatbelt, which is kind of interesting. If you ever take the seatbelt and then just jerk it real hard, or even when it's plugged in, just jerk the webbing real hard, it'll automatically lock as well. So yeah, it has changed a little bit, but I wish we had the lap bars back.
Yeah, I think it was safety for those kids that were flying up and into the air.
I don't want safety. I want fear.
So the other thing that I have here in this elevator is the inspection permit that you can actually see. I believe at least on the one I was on the other day, it was on the left-hand side. If you're looking, and you have to look through the grading to see it. It's not an easy thing to see, but it says permit to operate, state ID number 10/2/59. So that is the day that the Twilight Zone first aired its first episode. The date of last inspection is October 31st, 1939. So it was actually inspected the day that the tower was hit by lightning and everything stopped. And it was inspected by Cadwallader, which is from season 1, episode 6, The Escape Clause. In that episode, a chronic hypochondriac, Walter Bedecker, makes a deal with a mysterious man named Cadwallader, who turns out to be the devil, granting him immortality and indestructibility in exchange for his soul, which, if you're a Simpsons fan, that sounds very familiar because Bart exchanges his soul as well, and to devastating effects. So yeah, it's just referencing this Twilight Zone episode, which I think is really fun because now it's giving this, like, the person that inspected it was actually the devil who's looking to take your soul. So it's a little bit scary.
You know, I'll tell you, he didn't do a good job inspecting.
What, the elevator?
Yeah.
Yeah. Alrighty. So let's ascend in the elevator up to the corridor scene. So in the corridor scene, what we're looking at here is actually what the emergency fire escape plan is what we're looking at here, in case you're curious. But you can see the things that say the scenes on the side. Those are where the elevators are. And then you're looking into the projection room, which is on the left. You can see how the corridor kind of gets narrower there. We'll talk about that more in a minute, but that is kind of where we're at here in the tower. And you can see also where we have gone from down below in the boiler room. And then we are now in one of these scenes that are tan in this picture that has the projector at the end. So that's the corridor that we're talking about. It's basically the doors open and then you see this big hallway. So the show info guide from 1999 from Imagineering says, once guests seat themselves inside the rickety old car, the door slides shut and the elevator whisks them into the upper reaches of a decaying hotel. Before long, the elevator car slows to a stop and the doors slide open to reveal a long corridor of hotel rooms. Thunder cracks and lightning flashes as apparitions of those 5 long-lost hotel guests appear in the corridor, beckoning the guests in the elevator to join them. The spirits vanish as quickly as they appeared, and so does the rest of the corridor, leaving only a lone window floating in the distance. Guests are left staring into the vastness of space, where the hotel's window transforms into the familiar window from the Twilight Zone's classic opening credits sequence. The window shatters before guests' startled eyes, and the elevator door slides shut, and the car shoots even higher into the hotel. Before we get into all the details that we have here, because there are a few that we want to cover, I just want to show, this is from the Hollywood Tower Hotel version, some concept art. They actually had 2 corridor scenes in that particular version, not just one. And we're going to walk through that concept in full a little bit later on in this episode. But I just wanted to show you what these ones look like, because this is where they drew the inspiration for this particular scene. And this one also shows what it looks like going into the the stars are now taking over and the lights. So this is what we had before we had Tower of Terror, was this. So the idea of us kind of like fading out of reality is very much from this concept. And this is
looks
also
like we're underwater.
Yeah, that's what I said. It looks like under the sea, right?
Yeah, it does. Like even the sconces kind of turn into like a little bit of a coral vibe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's got a lot of blues and purples, and then there's some stars just kind of almost like in lines. They look like bubbles to me, but
they do. Yeah, exactly.
But then also this one is another concept that very much gives endless hallway haunted mansion vibes to me. It's, it's like a hallway that goes on forever. But our ride vehicle in this particular version then would go to the right. We would actually go into the corridor and turn to the right, because that ride vehicle moved an awful lot more than ours does today. This is actually the California Adventure version, so just bear with me that it is it's not exactly the one that's here, but it does give you a good perspective for this color board of what we're looking at in terms of the layout of this room, because we have the foyer on the left side, and then the middle is kind of like a little hallway, and then the big hallway with all the carpets that kind of narrows down with forced perspective at the end.
I do like how this lays out how it gets smaller and smaller and smaller towards the end, because that's really important to not only give you the feeling of depth, but also just like it's visually important for the effects that they're going to use.
So then we have the Imagineering storyboards for this scene. So frame 68 is scene 7, the corridor. The elevator slows and stops, the doors open to reveal a hotel hallway. As the doors are opening, there is a crack of thunder, a power surge, and a flash of light from the chandelier. A video camera captures an image of the guests in the elevator at this point in time, which would then be used later, which we'll talk about in a bit. But then frame 69 just shows the ghost, quote unquote, of the people showing up as little stars. Then frame 7, they're kind of like becoming lions instead of stars. 71, they now have like body shapes, but they're not fully seen, with some lightning in the middle. Frame 72, a ghostly group of hotel guests fades into view like a faltering television image. Which actually, Kirk, I've never realized that was what they were going for, was a faltering television image. Like, that's an interesting
it's got kind of like a static vibe to it.
Yeah. It says projected video on glass, Pepper's ghost effect, and we'll get into that in a minute. These are the same hotel guests who disappeared during the Twilight Zone opener on the television in the sitting room. They turn and look longingly at the elevator. So they're gazing at us. Then frame 73, we see a lot of lightning happening, and then they're like blinking back out of existence. Frame 74, we see more lightning. And then we see the window very prominently projected onto the floor in this particular one, and everything's getting darker. Frame 75, the lights are back on in this version, although the chandelier's crooked, which is interesting. And then frame 76, it says the walls slowly become transparent, which is painted scrim. Lightning changes. Through them, we see the starry Twilight Zone sky, fiber optics, the lights in the elevator cab dim. And then a voiceover from Rod Serling says you're traveling through another dimension. In frame 77, we see more stars in the corridor. It says the voiceover is a dimension not only of sight and sound, but of mind. Frame 78 is now faded completely into a star field with just a glowing window at the back, and it's all blue in this particular version. And then the voiceover says a journey into a wondrous land whose boundaries are that of imagination. Frame 79 is the last piece of architectural reality visible is a window at the far end of the hallway. So we're just seeing lots of stars with a tiny little window at the back. And frame 80 is just the tiny little window and a whole bunch of stars. Frame 81 is the window, and it says it hovers and distorts in the starry sky. So it's like moving, which is really interesting. And then 82, it's kind of like, now it's like on its side moving around in like circles. And then frame 83, the floating window then shatters. Frame 84, the stars fade to black. Frame 85, in darkness, the elevator doors close. The car begins to ascend once again. And frame 86, it says we're going to ascend into the fifth dimension for scene 6. And then it says with a voiceover, that's a signpost up ahead. So, Kirk, we have this like in the very back of this foyer is this window. And it's actually, what it is a projected movie. So you can see it changes from tan to purple. We see some lightning flashes. We hear all the audio from the scene. And then the wall fades away. The window is now moving, similar to what it did. Now it becomes the Twilight Zone window, and then it shatters. And that's that. So that's what we see projected on the back wall. And there's something that's I've never noticed, Kirk, maybe you have, but there's 2 photos or portraits that are on either side of this window. And one is of a man, I think a man, it's at least a face of somebody on the left. And then there's like maybe a couple, almost like a silhouette of a couple on the right side.
Yeah.
And I did consult all of our art history friends and say, is this resemble anything that you know? And everybody's like, no, looks like something Imagineering just kind of designed themselves probably, which is possible. So, but I think symbolically it could potentially be similar to the Little Girl Lost episode was so influential to this particular scene. And there is a portrait of that little girl in that episode that we get a close-up of just to establish like who she is when she's lost in the fifth dimension. So I kind of wonder if it's a throwback for this particular thing to, they're trying to establish that these people are lost in the fifth dimension. Maybe the same kind of thing tying it back into that episode is the best I could come up with, unless you have anything else, Kirk.
No, that was very well researched out of thin air. I like it.
So let's talk about some of the details that we see in this foyer. Kirk, do you have some? I know we've talked about like the mail chute that we really wish was in the scene that's in the downstairs in the lobby, but there's quite a bit of other things in this foyer. Do you want to talk about a few of them?
Let's talk about chairs.
Yay! Chairs.
We'll do chairs and plants. So as soon as you notice on each side of the foyer, there are these 2 wooden chairs with cushions on them. The closest I could find is a English Jacobean style armchair. Now, obviously, this is from like the 1960s, but it kind of has that carve out. It reminds me of stuff that we found in the lobby as well. So a wood boxy structure on the back, wooden arms, and then there would be like a velvety cushion that's riveted. I know this is riveting content. It's not very that good. It's not very interesting. All right, moving forward. Chairs. All right, and then plants. I'm our resident botanist, so
Yes.
I had to try to figure out what these the ferns are. So the best thing I can come up with for this fern is it is a Boston fern, although it does look like it is similar to the sword ferns that we saw outside, and they tend to have these like long arching feathery style like leaf structure, but it's not very compact or dense. Here is what a Boston fern typically looks like.
Oh, yeah.
And they're called that because they were first discovered in Boston, Massachusetts, of all places. And it is a mutation of a wild tropical sword fern native to Florida, Central America, and the Caribbean. And apparently a nurseryman in 1894 named F.C. Becker found these in a shipment of ordinary sword ferns in Florida, and he noticed that a handful of the plants had this mutation, and hence they started propagating and created the Boston fern because they liked the sword ferns point up straight. These ones are more droopies. So
Droopy
if
ferns.
you want the more beagle-eared fern, you get the Boston fern. If you'd like the more Doberman fern, you just are going to grab a sword fern. So there you go.
Oh, that's interesting.
It's not. It's really not.
I
It's
think it's interesting.
yeah.
It's just me.
It's you know what? I have to admit, there's so much stuff in here again. Like there's even like over the archway, there's some like faux finish that they did with some like ivy style structures. We have that mosaic style rug that's on the bottom. There's a couple of sconces and chandeliers and lamps. Is there anything else that you found particularly interesting outside of... I did think it was kind of cool that they have a drop ceiling in here. The only reason why I know it's a drop ceiling is because my father-in-law used to install these as a carpenter. And as soon as I saw it, I was like, that's it. I don't know why they would have done a drop ceiling specifically in here with the chandelier, but they have one.
Well, something that's interesting about this particular photo that you are showing here is that we do have a lot of those purples and blues and almost like swirls, like the under the sea thing that we saw from the Hollywood Haunted Hotel version, you know? Mm-hmm. So very interesting that those colors were still pulled in for this version. The other thing that I think is interesting, Kirk, about the foyer in particular is there are room numbers that are on the right side. So it adds that realism to this is how you're going to go find your room down this hallway. I also want to say, we talked about this a long time ago during kind of like the construction of the tower, but all of these scenes were constructed in California and then brought out to Florida. They were actually like shipped cross country. But let's talk about what's in further down the hallway here as we're doing forced perspective, and it's looking up into, it's actually at an incline and it also narrows. So both of those things are true. And we're seeing things that are outside the doors as it would be if, you know, the guests were staying there. So we see some newspapers that are leaning against the walls. We see like a room service tray, I think is what we're seeing on the left-hand side there.
Yeah, for sure.
And we do have some really great close-up pictures of these shoes, which is fabulous. So they're actually like smaller shoes than like, they're not full-size shoes because of the forced perspective. They need to make them little. So they're very small
it's like
shoes.
kid shoes.
Kid shoes, yeah. And then there's the newspapers that you see outside the door, the same ones that are everywhere in the tower, which have that woman who was the suitcase murderess who like chopped them up and put them in suitcases on the front title. So we've talked about that in depth. I'm not going to go into that again, but the same newspaper, there was an actual newspaper from that date in 1939 is outside of all of the doors as well, as if they've just been delivered. And this one is really cool. This is actually a door knobber, which was a new phrase for me that I just learned, but it's a sign you hang on the door. Just basically like do not disturb, right? Which is what this one says. It says do not disturb, and it has the Hollywood Tower Hotel logo on it. And I've never seen this before, because how in the world would you ever see that, right?
Yeah, it's so tiny.
It's so small. So that does exist on at least one of the doors as well, which I think is really neat. And here's another.
The other side says, please make up the room.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, I have a question.
Yeah.
Do you know why the shoes are outside the doors?
Do they leave them out there to shine, get them shoe
That's
shine?
it. It's
Yeah,
for
clean.
shoe shining services.
It's funny that
Or as I like to call it, free shoe day for Kirk. I just put them on my pets, though, because they're too small for my feet.
You know, what's really funny is that like everybody kind of comes from like different cultures and whatnot. And there's apparently some people don't like to bring their shoes inside their room, like because of the dirt and whatnot that's on their shoes.
That's true.
And so in particular, when I'm staying at the value resorts, it's always like a ton of shoes just outside the door. So I was like, free shoes, everybody.
Note to self, bring giant bag, duffel size for shoes at All Stars.
I also want to say a great big thank you to Joshua Harris of the E82 Project for helping collaborate with the series and help getting us some of these resources and really help us understand what's happening in this attraction in general. He devoted a lot of time to explaining some of the free fall attraction to me this previous week, so I appreciate that. You can find his Disney Parks soundtrack series, including music from the Universe of Energy that was recently released that hasn't been heard in 29 years on epcotlegacy.com. So thank you, Joshua, for your help. We really appreciate it. Let's talk a little bit about the mechanics of how this corridor works, how these effects work. The walls themselves are made of corrugated metal in the foyer with holes in the walls. So when the lights fade out, the fiber optics behind them turn on. They actually have lights inside the chairs and the rug. So the chairs themselves have lights inside them. So they disappear as well.
Yours don't at home? Oh my God.
What?
I said yours don't?
Yeah, I have lots of fiber optics in my chairs in my living room. So
I like to just shut the lights off and have all the stars around me.
that'd actually be pretty cool. Not gonna lie. Like I would be on that. I would love that. So all the fiber optics are only in the foyer. Everything beyond the glass is a solid wall. So there isn't corrugated metal back there. It's just all solid. I also wanted to mention that this hallway, because of the ghosts that are in it, very much brings back the idea of The Shining and the twin girls that are down the hallway. And we did see that in some early concepts that they threw around the idea of The Shining as part of their inspiration. So just wanted to mention that since we're in this scene. But Kirk, do you want to talk to us a little bit about the ghost effect of these, like how they achieve this?
Yeah. Now, Kate had shown earlier with the fire extinguisher, like fire plan, that there are these projection rooms. We're using projections twice, one for the end of the hallway, but for this particular effect, for the Pepper's ghost of the actual ghosts, you see a 45-degree angle mirror that bisects this center hallway corridor, right? Or like a piece of glass. It's not a mirror. It's just a 45 piece of glass. It's transparent, so you can see right through it, so you can actually physically see the end of the hallway. However, off to the left-hand side on this photo, because it can be on the other side as well. It just depends on where they angle the 45. Because I looked at, on that plans, it looked like one of the sides it was angled the other way, but I'm not sure if that's true or not. But there is a projector that will be shooting the ghosts onto this frame, because there's a lot of movement here. You know, we know Pepper's ghosts from a lot of Disney attractions, and a lot of times they use practical, right? You're talking Blue Fairy in Snow White's Enchanted
Wish.
What? Wish?
Enchanted Wish, yeah.
Thank you. Sorry,
yeah,
non-Disneylander. And then in obviously the Haunted Mansion, and in both of those, they physically have mannequins that are moving off frame. Winnie the Pooh has one as well when when he's like dreaming about heffalumps and woozles. Again, these are physical, actual, practical effects that are being shot onto the glass. But here, because there's such complex movements of the ghosts, it's all going to be digitally done with a projector. One thing that is cool is there are several hidden Mickeys within this attraction. We've already talked about the coins in the coin tray. I don't know if we briefly talked about it. I can't remember in the pre-show, but the little girl is holding a Mickey Mouse plush.
Right.
I know we talked about that
definitely
plush,
talked about
but
it. Yeah.
you call that a hidden Mickey because nobody really like actively thinks that, oh my gosh, she's holding a Mickey plush. It's like, because it just happens so quickly. Well, that Mickey plush shows up again in this scene in her left hand. The little girl's holding the Mickey Mouse. That would be another hidden Mickey here.
And there's the one in the boiler room too.
Yes, which I still have not went in and tried to take a better picture of it. But I also did find this person did something really fun. They 3D printed the foyer to Welcome to Disney Adult Nerd. I love it. And you can actually see in their diorama, they have their translucent glass here. And then when they project out, they put like they did a physical Pepper's Ghost. And it's a little tiny, like, light up blue ghost. Isn't that fun?
That is fun.
But it gives you an idea of, like, obviously this projector is out of the field of view of guests, much like in this ghost is out of our field of view when looking at it directly from the front. So you can kind of see how there would be projector sides, like, off adjacent from that middle hallway.
So you can see here what Kirk's pointing out. The projector room is actually listed here on this like fire escape plan. And you can see the angle of the mirror as well. Just give you a little bit idea of what we're talking about and where it's at. But the ghost projector, it is correct, Kirk. It is different depending on which side you're on, if it's on the right or the left. You can see the ghost projector like room that goes off into the side. And that's where those ghosts.
I mean, it makes sense because they have to offshoot them because otherwise it would go into the center line. Yeah. And the center line has less space in between them. So
right. And the glass itself is 40% reflective and 60% transmissive, if it makes a difference.
Oh, transmissive. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
You can just kind of see the effect in action here with the ghosts disappearing, and then the lightning effects kind of are triggered around them as they disappear. With the projection of ghosts, they used to have a different kind of projector that could do perfect black. And when they had to like digitize it and standardize, like upgrade it, they had a huge problem because they couldn't achieve true black, like make it completely the way they wanted it to be. So they solved the problem by taping theatrical gels on top of the projector lights to dim it to a certain point so they can achieve true black with what they currently have, which I thought was really interesting. And the other thing is, apparently
time out real quick.
What?
One thing to point out is that the back projector, they can't use that same style. So you'll notice it when we watch the effect go through. Like I'll play a full, because I think everybody needs to see what it looks like to see the ghosts and then see the back projection, like all as one all encompassing scene. Cause it's only like 60 seconds.
Yeah.
But you'll actually see at the end, like where the projection screen is when it goes to the window, because it's the black is not dark. Like when I worked at Best Buy and we would sell TVs, that was like one of the selling points of OLED TVs is like you could turn off all the LEDs and it would be a true black, but plasma screens could do that. The new LEDs can't do that at all. Hence why, like when you watch a movie, it still is like illuminated up. You're going to notice that in the back projection because you can't put gels on it at all to dim it out. It's impossible because they have to project the whole entire end scene, or not the end scene. They have to project the daytime hallway scene before it transitions to night. So you'll notice it's not very dark.
That was so triggering for my time at Best Buy, by the way.
Yeah. So right now, they've electrified. You see the lightning effects, but you'll notice the back. If you go all the way in the back, it's really bright.
Yeah.
And even when we transition into this nighttime scene, it's still really bright. Now, they're using a low light lens, so it's pulling out even more, but it's noticeable that that's a projection until it shuts out.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
Even for regular guests, something funky's happening.
Right. There is another projector also that is in the ceiling just beyond the foyer that projects down at a 45-degree angle, and it projects a shadow for the ghosts. which I had no idea
Oh, that's
existed.
cool.
Mhm.
Well, I mean, they're using obviously a bunch of projectors because they have to do projections for the lightning effects too. Those ones are in the ceiling. That's probably why they have the drop ceiling, is to hide projectors to do the lightning effects. Now that I
Yeah.
think about it.
Yeah. Well, and you can see, how they talked about the camera that is supposed to capture you, so they're going to use it later in like the eyeball effect. That one you can actually see in the archway up above where all of that kind of painted stenciling is. There is a circle, and that is where that camera lives, is right in there. Now, whether or not they still use that to capture you or not is debatable, but that is what its original intent. So that's what that circle is that you're seeing at the top there.
Dude, okay, time out.
Yeah.
You're blowing my mind, because I thought that eyeball with that one screen was never us and was always just like a generic one. So you just thought like, oh, okay, it's whomever. It's people who are on the ride. But I always thought it was just like a generic group. I never knew they actually took your picture and that was where the camera was located. That's super fascinating.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it is now a standardized one, but I think its original intention iteration was for it to be you, and you are going into the fifth dimension and to communicate that in that eyeball. So
that's so cool.
But I don't think that they actually do it now. I've never seen myself in the eyeball. So
no, I've always seen like something that looks like it's from the 90s, and I'm like, yeah, that ain't us.
Yeah, no. Before we move on into the fifth dimension, we're just going to take a very quick little break and talk about some things we got going on at Disney Cicerone and Walrus Carp. So, Kirk, what are you busy with over there these days? What are you doing?
It's Halloween haunt season. I'm wearing a throwback one. It's just a good one. It's Night of the Living Lands. We sell a ton of this shirt because it's funny and it does well. Here's a life lesson, though, for the people who made Night of the Living Dead. The owner or the director and producer changed out one of the final scenes, and as a result, like it was like a copyright thing, because the way that they altered it and changed it and removed like one mark, as soon as the film was produced and published, it instantly became public domain. So anybody could reproduce it, make whatever they want instantaneously when it first came out. So it was like a horrible George Romero mistake. But yeah, there you go.
So I just got back from a cruise on the Disney Dream, which was really, really fun. And it was a different kind of cruise than most people go on, I'd say, because it was a writing retreat. So I specifically booked the cruise with a author friend of mine. And our purpose was to spend the day writing separately and then get together in the evening and kind of talk about what we're working on and visit and whatnot. And so it was a really wonderful blend of creativity and also like being fed creatively because of the beautiful atmosphere and, of course, Imagineering's details and the shows that you get to see and all those kinds of things. And so I had kind of a rhythm to my day that I made a short about recently, so I won't get into it. But it was really lovely to get to work on my two next books, which I am actively making very good progress on. One of them is almost complete, and I'm very excited about that. But I just wanted to mention that because I'm kind of in a fiction land in my head, I'm writing a historical fiction that's going to be set in Disneyland in 1955. And so it just reminded me of my very first fiction that I wrote, which was Where the Fireflies Dance. And it takes place in Disneyland, but modern day, and involves two Disney history live streamers that they find love in the shadow of Sleeping Beauty Castle, but with one of them hiding a dangerous secret, their fairy tale romance might just unravel into an unhappily ever after. So include some Disney history. It will set your brain in Disneyland as a whole. And it's just kind of a sweet little story, but also with some suspense as well. So that is available on Amazon if you're interested, and as well as all the Myra Stiller books, including my nonfiction series. But yeah, busy, lots and lots of writing going on over here, and it was really soul filling, that particular cruise. Not only I love Disney cruises in general, I wish I got to go on more of them. They're so spendy, but it was really fun, a really great experience, and I would do it again in a heartbeat if I could. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, That's what we
I'm
did.
glad you got to do that with a great friend.
Yeah, it was really meaningful. She's my friend's name is Sydney Swanson, is the author name. She writes young adults like science fiction mostly, but she's a best-selling author and she is a fantastic storyteller. So, and she has written some books also that have to do with incorporate some Disney history because she's a huge Disney person. She loves Disney. So anyway, let's move into the fifth dimension because there's a lot to talk about here. The inspiration for the fifth dimension largely comes from this episode called The Little Girl Lost from 1962, where basically a little girl rolls under her bed, or like they think she's rolled under her bed, but actually she's like fallen into the fifth dimension in the wall that's behind her bed. And so they took that inspiration and that's what they decided to come up with this original story that's not in the Twilight Zone for this attraction. And you can see here in this episode, everything kind of looks distorted and abstract shapes and lights. And it's just a very like weird, bizarre place because they had to imagine what the fifth dimension looks like. So that's what we're going to see as we move into all of these concepts for the fifth dimension of how they're going to capture this space that nobody has ever seen, right? So I want to talk a little bit about the free fall version of this attraction first. And I do have kind of an interesting quote from WDI production designer Corey Sewelson on the challenges of creating this three-dimensional fifth dimension. He said, everything is dissonant and distorted in the fifth dimension. The rules of reality do not apply. We see bits of hotel architecture, strange glowing silhouettes, and images from the opening titles of the Twilight Zone. The doorway, the shattering window, and an eyeball that holds a surprise image for the guests, which we'll get into in a bit. But they wanted to be sure the scene faithfully depicted the feeling of the fifth dimension, and that was their goal. So let's talk a little bit about the Hollywood Haunted Hotel free fall version that came before the Tower of Terror, because if we understand this version, they pulled a tremendous amount from this to inspire our current version. So context is important. This is kind of a wonky, kind of distorted way of looking at this particular version. And we've talked about it more in our concept episode. But you can see in this, the elevator moves around, Kirk, like so much more than it does now. Like, it's here, it's there, it's up, it's down, it's around, it's on its back. It's literally like...
It's a Wonka-vator.
It is a complicated ride system. And I can only imagine how often this would break down if we had it today. Because it's everywhere. This particular scene is an orthographic 45-degree view of where we're going. And I think this is the best place to start to kind of help you understand it. But you can see here, we have two corridor scenes on the left that they go into. And then they go out into the fifth dimension. There is a mini drop. And then they rotate backwards. Then you rotate forward at a corner. You move into a drop shaft that then lifts up, and then it drops down into the slide out for the big dramatic drop at the end. And then you unload, which we'll talk about a little bit later when we get to that area in this attraction. But do I have a treat for you guys today? Because
this picture's already awesome.
It is, right? So I do have like a close-ups of what these scenes actually look like and the layout of them. And we do have the same kind of corridor with the ghost projector is in this version. We can see that line there where the mirror, the glass would sit. So that was in this version of the idea of all of that. And I'm just going to go through this pretty quickly just for sake of time, but you guys can always pause and look at them a little bit more. But it was a very complicated system, but it is similar to what we have today, except that the ride vehicle would actually go out into the corridor and then make a turn like I mentioned before. But I have a treat for you guys because I actually have the storyboard art from David Durand for the Hollywood Haunted Hotel free fall version of this attraction. And I debated whether or not to show you guys all of it because I was like, this is a lot. However, so much of this defined what we have now that I feel like it would be remiss to not show you what these look like. So I'm going to go through these very, very quickly because there's a lot of them, but I am going to describe what we're seeing here so that you can understand fully what it is that we get later. So also a disclaimer, I'm not 100% sure that these are all exactly in order. These are like the best guess that Joshua had when I consulted him. So just take that for a grain of salt. But the first one we see here is an eyeball that's floating in kind of a green-blue sea with a whole bunch of like people, ghosty people. Then we see an elevator itself that is falling down a corridor with a whole bunch of lightning and like pipes and whatnot and electrical systems, kind of similar to the boiler room. This one has a whole bunch of those ghost figures with these archways that have lightning on them. Also a clock with a pendulum and an eye and a floating window and a floating person, which are things we see from the opening of the Twilight Zone, which all that comes back later. This one has a whole bunch of kind of like skeletal figures that with lightning and blue swirls, a very, very dramatic picture, kind of frightening actually. Then we see a big archway with kind of stars and lightning behind it and some distorted people figures. This one reminds me a lot of the Twilight Zone in particular, because it has like the person who's like looking for somebody and they're distorted. This is more of a sketch. And then this one is an interesting one. It just has light bulbs that are hanging beyond these kind of like striped cages almost. And so it's like maybe this is how they were thinking how they could achieve this effect of these swirls in this space more practically. So then this one has actually like the end of a hallway that looks like almost like a portal that has opened, similar to Little Girl Lost, except you actually can see into the portal and see into the fifth dimension as if the wall has kind of disappeared. And then you see an eyeball and swirls and a whole bunch of things beyond that. And then it looks like you go into that space because then there's a whole bunch of kind of abstract shapes and whatnot that looks like you have now entered into what was beyond the wall. This one shows guests that are in the elevator seeing a bright light that is shining towards them, like you're going into the light. And then this one has a whole bunch of like almost like swirls of clouds. Reminds me a little bit of Alice in Wonderland, you know, that
like
those
down
swirls.
the rabbit hole.
Yeah. And then there's like a giant skeletal like figure that's terrifying that's coming at you with some claws. So there's that. Then this one is just starting to show these like bands of light that have, they're blue. And I don't even know if I have a good way to describe them. There's kind of like a whole bunch of little kind of stars inside them, but it looks like they're streaking by in a way.
It looks like veins. And then like a close up of the veins with the optical lights.
Yeah, it reminds me of the EAC. You know, if you're going to hop into the EAC, but like in the Twilight Zone, like you're going to go for a ride on that. So then we see more of these kind of swirling blue and purple lines to indicate our going into this fifth dimension.
Thinking about it, because I think you've triggered a connection in my brain. It's like, you know, when Bill and Ted go back in time and they're going through like those tube portals, like in the phone booth.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It kind of has that exact vibe, like a network of these well-lit galactic highways.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good way of putting it. Which, of course, then these lines almost get then interpreted into these pipes and electrical boxes and all this stuff. So very much the things that we saw in the boiler room incorporated into the design. And we see a close-up of them. And then so this would be in the free fall version, there's an extended period where you're moving through the fifth dimension and it's long. It's way longer than it is now. And so I think that's what this is depicting here is your move through the fifth dimension into the fifth dimension where everything looks like a star field, but you still have like all of these pipes. So it's like you're going from where you were into a new place. And
well, this particular image is like where we would be going through an illuminated shaft where in the instance of the tower, that's all done in darkness.
Right. And then we start to see like a swirling green light that's at the end of this kind of hallway that we're in. But then you can see we're still moving through the hallway and there's like a bend or a shape to it. It's not straight. And then it starts to distort, like whole hallway starts to like swirl. So it's like distortion of your reality. And you go around, you do see an image of some people outside of an elevator on the right side. And then you start to see the objects from the Twilight Zone swirling around you, the little like person flying and the door and the clock and all those things. There's an eyeball that is just outside a window on the side. And what's interesting, Kirk, is what starts to show up is the like furnace doors in here. There's one on the right here, but that's like, hold on to that because that's going to come back. But we get closer and closer to the eye and we do actually see us in the eyeball. But it's like us in the elevator, but the elevator is like falling through space almost.
Oh, that's weird.
Yeah, it's so weird. And we can see us close up and then we shatter like a mirror. And then we swirl off into the distance and within the eyeball. And then we move down further down this corridor, and this is where the furnaces get their moment in the sun, because not only do we have lightning, but then the furnace door like opens, or like it's almost like an explosion from the furnace, which then amplifies the danger we felt in the boiler room. And this giant kind of ring of like green fire comes at you, and there's fire coming out of the boiler room. So it's definitely hinting at danger. And you're moving closer and closer as if you're going to go into the fireplace itself or the furnace itself. And then you move past it somehow, and then there's a whole bunch of like people that are kind of disfigured, dismembered. Their hands, there's faces, they're just kind of everywhere as if they're stuck in the fifth dimension. There's like hands coming out of the walls. And then we have this picture of our elevator, but we look like skeletons. And those skeletons with like harnesses on for the ride. So I'm not really sure where they were going with that, except to like suggest we're going into the fifth dimension.
Unless you passed by a screen that transposed the skeletons on our body with the harnesses.
Maybe. Yeah, that's possible. But then it also shows like us just regular as well. And then it shows us moving up, but like sideways and distorted up through the elevator shaft. And then we turn into skeletons again. So I think projection, or like something we're seeing, like what's going to happen to us, makes most sense. But I'm not really sure what that's for, except maybe that is us going up. And it's supposed to be depicting us moving up. And then we see just a giant field of stars. It's purple with a whole bunch of stars. We're in stars. And then we see us falling through this field of stars in our elevator, similar to what we were in the eyeball. And then, of course, there's multiple of us, and we're everywhere all at once. There's like 100 of us. So, and then it's like we're going towards the light. There's all these swirls of like smoke and whatnot. And then there's a bright light with beams of light that we're heading toward. And then we see everything falling through this space towards a light, including the stuff from the Twilight Zone and our elevator shaft. And then we are just falling towards the light. And then there's just abstract swirls of purple and blue in a star field, just depicting the fifth dimension, including a big spiral and lightning. And then the spiral gets larger, and then it turns on its side, and it looks like we're inside the spiral. And then there's a whole million of us, and we're kind of like going off into the distance and spiraling into the spirals. There's a lot of spiraling going on. We'll just say that. And then it's just like we multiply. So that, again, over the spiraled image, it's basically just trying to depict like what could we possibly look like for us to be in the fifth dimension. And then at some point we shatter into a million pieces like diamonds, and head into the spiral itself, which distorts and goes into like a space star field. And then there's like these random black starry lines that look like veins over a white backdrop. And this is the spiral itself. This one also is a circle that's depicting some lightning. And then it fades to black. And that's actually one of the things that it has. It's just straight black. So this is where it gets interesting, Kirk, because now it's black. Now we see some stars. And now we're going to enter into what I think is very similar to our fifth dimension scene. We start to see on this black and star field with some like clouds kind of coming in, and we see the clock, the eye, and the door or the window floating through space, and then the people show up on the sides, just like we're going to see in our fifth dimension. And so then they add in the archways that have all of the lightning on them, which we're going to see in our version. And it just kind of moves forward into that scene. With you do see us inside the eyeball at this particular point. You can see us sitting there, and then I'm just going to move through these pretty quickly. Then we move towards like a door that's at the end that's kind of a concentrated light, and then the doors open, and then it's black again. And then we have us covering our faces and being horrified as we fall and then shatter into a million pieces. And that's pretty much it. So the other thing that we have is just kind of showing the progression of how it moves through that space. So it moves past this eyeball and then into a shattering, then into the swirl, and then up into the shaft. So really elaborate concept that he put forth there to describe what this fifth dimension could possibly look like. But I think it gives us a lot of context for where they got all of the things they eventually put in this
Yeah,
attraction.
they like pulled bits and pieces from this and interjected it into the final version of the fifth dimension.
Right. So I do have the show info guide from 1999 for the Tower of Terror version for what we currently have. It says the elevator makes another stop and the doors slide open to reveal the fifth dimension, the Twilight Zone itself. The car impossibly detaches itself from the elevator shaft and crosses over into an eerie land of shadow and substance, things and ideas. Gliding through the middle ground between light and shadow, between science and superstition, the elevator car transports guests deeper and deeper into the fifth dimension. Guests even see a ghostly image of themselves before yet another mystic portal opens and the elevator car makes a stomach-churning ascent beyond the fifth dimension, into the Tower of Terror, where guests experience for themselves that fateful night in 1939. So for the storyboards, we have Scene 8 as the fifth dimension. Frame 87, it's a Rod Serling voiceover. This showing a lot of the pipes and whatnot in the scene. And it says, your next stop is the Twilight Zone. Or next stop, the Twilight Zone. And frame 88 shows the pendulum clock and some windows that are floating through the fifth dimension. There's actually a whole bunch of clocks. And then there's some people that are translucent. And there's a whole bunch of windows as well in frame 89. Frame 90 has archways with the lightning on it and the more people as well. Then 92 has the eyeball and some doors. Frame 93 is the eyeball with us inside it. Frame 94 is you can see us closer up in the eyeball. There's actually 2 eyeballs in this one. 3 eyeballs? There's a lot of eyeballs and a lot of doors. And it's all purple and you can start to see the lightning as well. Frame 95 is a lot of the lightning effects that you see that are all around you on the archways. Frame 96, you're actually headed into the starfield, so you can see everything's kind of fading out, and there's just stars. And then frame 96A is a bright flash of light. And that's pretty much that.
So some practical images, and it's going to be a little bit of a refresh of when we talked about the ride system, dozens of episodes ago. So you can see lots of rusted pipes. Overhead is kind of like a guiding rail. But remember that these ride vehicles themselves are using a wire guidance system, which is tied into the AGV or the autonomous guided vehicles that slide from one shaft to another. So you can see this is what that undercarriage of these elevator system looks like. And it's literally following a course that is guided electronically. And this is the number one reason why the Tower of Terror goes down for a progressive period of time that they can fix, but it just takes a while, is this gets off track. And there's a safety mechanism that obviously they don't want the trackless system to be smashing into a wall or something. So as soon as it is misaligned, it'll shut down. I thought this was a cool picture. This is backwards facing. So this is immediately as soon as you go in. So the pipes and everything, this is somebody looking behind, which is kind of cool. I've never seen a perspective like that before. And then Kate had shown this earlier, but you can see how it will then guide from either the Echo or Foxtrot into and through the fifth dimension, and then, Delta and Charlie and Bravo and Alpha, and transitioning into either the Foxtrot or the Echo elevator shaft. So that's how the AGVs kind of guide themselves into that center one hallway that we have. There are multiples of items. Kate had already mentioned a couple of these. In this picture, you can see the physical clock, which does use some projection effects, but it is a physical, tangible clock as well. On the right-hand side is the closed eyeball, which uses practical effects of the eyeball actually opening, but then it also uses projection effects. So you can see the eyeball. It does have lashes, man. It's got some good curlers. I don't know who does, but they've got clearly, one of those things that looks like
eyelash curler. Yeah.
It's all no. And so that's a rear projector that's on that eyeball, and the eyeball moves around, and then that's when your ride vehicle picture that gets taken in the center camera of the foyer that Kate had mentioned earlier. You'll also notice here on the right-hand side, there are these characters, and you can see them also in this image on the left-hand side. They are, I don't know what the material is that they're made out of, but they are the same characters that we see in the scene prior. So you're going to have the bellhop, you're going to have the couple, you're going to have the little girl. You can see the bellhop is actually holding, some of the luggage in his hands. Now, what I think is really cool about this, and we'll talk about it a little bit later, but this is not the only time that we see these, acrylic or plastic models that are translucent. Now, remember in the storyboards that Kate just showed, there was multiple times where you saw figures that were like ghastly, and so these are molded figures of them that they project colors on and lightning effects. But you actually see them a little bit later on in the ride as well.
So on one of the sides here, we have a lot of the archways and the pipes here. I think it's the right side. And we see the people that are quote unquote in the ghost scene is how they define it, which they're not technically ghosts because they're just trapped in the fifth dimension. So I'm not really sure why Imagineering keeps calling them ghosts in virtually everything when they're not technically ghosts. That kind of bothers me, but it is what it is. So I do have some interesting...
What is the definition of a ghost?
I feel like you're dead. You have to be dead. They're not dead. They're in another plane of existence.
Could it just be a transfiguration into a different dimension?
Yeah, that's what I would think. I do have some interesting things about the way that they designed these people. And this one, they actually have them on a turntable in this concept. This is from January 22nd of 1993. And so they have them on a turntable that goes 110 degrees and then returns at 2 RPM. I feel like this was an earlier concept that then they decided to go a different direction with this, but you can see all the figures very, very clearly. And then in this one is more what we have now. So Kirk, not only are these figures just there, they actually move, they oscillate. So what they do is that there's two halves of the figures and they're supposed to rotate like bicycle pedals. So they go like this, they go past each other. They rotate. And they're translucent and the mechanism is not to be seen 9 inches under the floor as the notes that are on this. I just think it's really interesting that that is actually how they're designed. There's two halves of them and they're rotating like bicycle pedals. And I've never seen them do that.
I've only seen them stationary.
So I don't know if it's an effect that's not working or not fast enough for us to notice or what. But this is actually, from what I understand, this is actually how they're designed currently, which I think is really interesting. And then you can also see how they lit them here. It says 3D luminescent figures for the fifth dimension, and their light source is at the bottom, and then they're internally lit with also some fog, which I'm not sure I've ever seen fog in there, but that was the idea, is that their feet would be kind of obscured by fog. And then we have on the other side, the left side, we see this floating door. So I have the concept sketch for that as well. This says the door icon for scene 8. This is from January 20th of 1993, and it can show that it's rotating on an axis at 20 RPM. And it says the door moves on all 3 axes simultaneously. So it's going to pitch and yaw and all those kinds of things. Yeah, it's a wild door, but I think it's really interesting how much thought they put into that. And I'm I don't even know if I've seen that thing move. I need to pay more attention to see.
No,
any
I've
of this
definitely
stuff
seen the door move because it is weeble wobbling up in there.
Okay. I'm wow, there's so many things in the scene I never even realized were there. We do have the EMC squared equals MC squared, which is here, which has a similar effect. It says the equation moves on all 3 axes simultaneously. So similar to the door as well. So, and that's at 20 RPM, but you can see that was the concept for that, again, from that same week in 1993. And then we have the pendulum clock, which is a throwback to the one that is in the Twilight Zone. So they designed it after that. Has a bell on the top and then the time. And it says the minute hand of clock spins counterclockwise at 20 RPM. The hour hand of clock spins counterclockwise, start-stop movement per revolution. And it's so tiny of minute hand. The pendulum swings 15 degrees from center at 20 RPM. So if you ever want to know exactly how fast any of these things go, now you know probably
it's 20 RPMs, kids. Somewhere between 15 and 20 degrees.
Then this is also the color board for this clock, which I think is really lovely. Lots and lots of greens and blues in that. With the eyeball, I also have a lot of sketches for that. So it shows the eyeball with eyelid closed, the eyelid opens, and the eyelid closes. The cycle of the eyelid opening and closing is what they're showing here. Again, 20 RPM. So everything's very standardized in terms of how it's moving. And here's the color board for the eyeball, which I think is actually beautiful. I don't feel like we have... I've never noticed any purples and greens in this particular eyeball before, but apparently that's what it's supposed to look like.
Kids, this is a first on Distory. Kate has said that a prop eyeball has a beautiful color board. I don't think that's ever been uttered in the human language. So congrats on being the first human to ever say that.
Some people have beautiful eyes, That's true.
That's not what you said.
Okay, that's true. That's true. That's not what I said. And I don't have time to get into all of the mechanics of this, but there is quite a very detailed description of exactly how we show up in this eyeball and move through the pupil and whatnot, which I think was just really, really fascinating to see exactly how they planned that to put us into the fifth dimension, not just physically, but also we could see ourselves moving into it, which I think is throwback to that concept of like there being multiple versions of us at once. I think is kind of where they're having that. So, and then I have a couple of sketches also of the bulkhead electric fingers concept. So that's one you'll never forget. These are the electric fingers of the Twilight Zone and the fifth dimension. So that you can see all those archways. There's again more electric fingers concept, which I think is so weird.
Zap.
And another one as well, just showing the dimensions of that just for your enjoyment. But this picture here does show all of the lights on at once, which Joshua is like, this would never happen. You would never see all of these lighting effects on at the exact same time. So you see like the incandescent light, you see the lightning, the electric fingers, and you see the star field, and it's all illuminated at the same time, and that would never happen. So this is kind of a rare photo for you guys to see of all the lighting effects on at the same time. But let's go back to the Starfield doors. Basically, they couldn't figure out how to hide the doors that open up to the elevator, so people couldn't see them well. And someone thought, like, what if all the pinpoints of light converge and then it opens up into the fifth dimension? But what's interesting about these doors, Kirk, is that they're at an angle. So you can see it here on the fire plan, how they're actually like pointed away from you towards the elevator shaft. And what they do is those lines that go to the side, they actually slide open. They're hanging on kind of like a path on the top. And so they slide open. Joshua said these doors are extremely heavy because of all of the fiber optics that are inside and all the mechanisms that they have on the inside. So everybody has to stay very far away from them when they're operating because they're very dangerous, because they're so heavy. And there is a box that controls them on the side. My understanding is that with this, the star field is the way that it kind of like converges is they just cover up all the fiber optics with like a sliding inside panel, and then it converges into that light in the center, unless you found anything differently about it.
Now that's really interesting. Have you ever seen what shows up at the end?
Is it a hidden Mickey?
It is.
Do you have a picture of it?
I don't have a picture, but we can watch a video. You want to watch a video?
Let's watch a video. Yeah.
It's TV time, kids. So this is, now you can actually see the window undulating, and oh man, I wonder how fast that clock is going. It looks like roughly about 20 RPMs. There's our eyeball opening up with them luscious lashes. But now, if we want to stare dead center frame, boop, right there. Let's see if I can zoom this in. I cannot. I can't make it bigger. But there's an ear and an ear and a center right there in the middle. Yeah, it's like one frame before it shuts off.
I'll never see it the same.
Yeah, it's... You know what's funny is sometimes this doesn't even work. Like the closeout, these just stop. They go black and it doesn't do this dissolve. But sometimes it does. Like you can see it a little bit more here.
I will say that Joshua tried to explain to me exactly how the fiber optics work, and I understood like 20% of it. So kudos
that's pretty
to him
good.
for
20%
knowing
is
all
pretty
of it.
good.
You know, but it is all fiber optics inside those doors, and it's just kind of like closing out. And then,
I mean, because you could see the door itself has those lights, those like strip lights too in the center,
Right.
which is really neat.
Right. But it is interesting to me. I think that it's at an angle, you know, so then they're pulling away. But as far as that's all I have for the fifth dimension, unless you have anything else.
No, I did Google what a ghost is, and a ghost does seem to be, it has to be somebody who's departed. So I think a disembodied specter would probably be better than ghost.
Yeah, I don't think ghost is accurate, but that is definitely what they use everywhere in some of these technical documents. So I'm like, okay, it's not ghost, but they're going to call it a ghost. But I'll tell you what, seeing all of that concept art, like I understand that scene so much more than I ever did before, exactly what they were trying to achieve. Whether or not they actually achieve that with what we currently have is debatable. You know, I don't know if I really feel like I'm falling into the fifth dimension so much as just moving and watching things go by in the windows, you know. But the eyeball effect is pretty cool. I kind of wish it was us and that effect still worked. So I don't know if that's true or not, but
that projector is like the worst quality. They would need to plus the projector and the camera system, which they could easily do.
yeah.
But that is clearly an old projector.
Yeah, for sure. It could use a little TLC, but
Mm-hmm.
it is still a really fascinating artistic scene, the way that they tried to achieve the fifth dimension, which is totally out of imagination. So
It kind of has this vibe of a collage of ideas, but not one singular like story that actually is fluid, you know?
yeah, similar
But
to
I
the
mean,
Haunted
maybe the
Mansion,
fifth
I
dimension
guess.
is like that, you know,
Yeah.
where it is just, you know,
It is what it is. It's just
a
random
collection
stuff.
of, right. Yeah, exactly. It's like a Bennigan's in there.
Well, that's where we have to pause for this week. And next week, we'll actually fall down the elevator shaft and talk about that quite a bit.
Or go up it.
Or go up it. And both, baby, both. It's hard to say. But there's actually way more than you think there is in that particular drop shaft to talk about. And then, of course, there is the exit scene with all of the knickknacks and whatnot that we got to go over. So that's probably where we're headed next week. But we hope you guys enjoyed exploring the corridor and the fifth dimension and understanding it in context a little bit more. We appreciate you guys hanging out with us here on Distory. Kirk, do you have any final thoughts here as we wrap up?
The doors are on an angle and they slide away. Remember that. At 20 RPMs.
20 RPMs. I don't know if the door goes that fast,
No,
but everything else in
it goes
that
way
does.
faster than that because you can see him pull away pretty quickly.
And next time, look for oscillating people. Oscillating.
They're not oscillating, bro. They are sedentary
Just yell at
people.
those people should be oscillating, and they're not
Where's
ghosts.
the bike pedal effect?
I mean, those
What?
people on the top. We're like, what are you doing?
It's not oscillating, and they're not ghosts.
And I should be in that eyeball. That
And-
beautiful, beautiful eyeball.
What? What's wrong? That lady said she should be in the eyeball.
Oh my goodness. Well, thank you everybody for joining us for this episode of Distory, and we'll see you next time for more of the Tower of Terror. See you, everybody. Bye.